Lincoln Riley gets it done in year one. I mean, and there's more to get done. That much is for certain. Like the journey's not done, of course, but one very, very big goal. Check mark now. Mission accomplished. Reached the Pac-12 championship game. Did it in the first year. And may I say that back in the summer, Pac-12 media poll, preseason coaches poll, preseason Associated Press poll. What did they all say? They all picked USC third. All right. So you can do the simple math here. If you're being picked third, you're being picked to miss the Pac-12 championship game. You're not in that top two. So USC has exceeded what all the pundits and all the media voters and the coaches thought about this team in the summer. And if you've watched previous Monday shows here at the Voice of College Football, you know that the general national consensus was 9-3. That was just the general landing spot for what most pundits thought USC's record would be. Some people, yours truly, thought 10-2. Other people thought 8-4. So USC is officially going to eclipse 9-3. This is a team that's 10-1, could be 11-1, but will at least be 10-2 in the 12-game regular season. So really, on several levels, USC with this win over UCLA, and again, journey not done. A lot of business to tend to. Of course, the college football playoff is out there, but let's savor this. Like, let's take a moment to savor this and know how much this team has already overachieved to this point. More work to be done, but this 10th win, getting to the Pac-12 championship game, it definitely represents overachievement for USC. All right, more on the postseason and the road ahead in Notre Dame and the Pac-12 championship game, but let's say a few more things about the UCLA game. One is that, and this puts into perspective how amazing the job is that Lincoln Riley has done in 1 year. Lincoln Riley gets it done in 1 year, taking a 4-8 team, turning it around to 10-1 and getting it to Las Vegas for the Pac-12 title game. On the other side of the coin, UCLA needed 5 years to get to this point. 5 years to get to the point where it's playing UCLA for all the stakes, for all the Tostitos. It took 5 years for UCLA to get to this point. UCLA did not sniff the Pac-12 title the previous 4 years of Chip Kelly's tenure. He needed the fifth year. He needed DTR coming back for a fifth year because of pandemic eligibility. Not many quarterbacks in the history of college football have played 5 straight seasons, because this was not an injury situation. This was the extra year of pandemic eligibility that DTR took. Chip Kelly needed that to build UCLA to this point. He needed grad transfers as well. It's like this was the all-in season for UCLA. This was Chip Kelly's one moment, because if you watch last week's show here on the Voice of College Football with Tony Siracusa, Tony Bruin on Twitter at Last Word on College Football, Tony does a great job, covers Wake Forest, covers the ACC, but also very much, covers UCLA and knows that program inside and out. He said it. Didn't make any bones about it. UCLA is heading for a rebuild next year because they have all this senior talent, all this veteran talent. This was the put all the poker chips in the middle of the table moment for UCLA. And USC's 1 year Lincoln Riley project with all these transfers, with all these new faces, is able to get the job done against UCLA. UCLA has not won a conference championship since that Cade McNown team in 1998. It's probably going to be at least 30 years, if not longer, for UCLA to win a conference championship because, so next year's a rebuild, so won't win the Pac-12 next year. And then you get to the Big Ten, and you're going to have to go through Michigan and Ohio State as well as USC for UCLA to have any hope of winning the Big Ten. So it just puts into context that, hey, you have UCLA with a quarter-century conference title drought. Winning is not easy, and even when you think things are rolling, as they were for UCLA in the late 1990s under Bob Toledo, taking the baton from Terry Donahue, even when things are rolling, the music can stop. And we've seen it at USC. We felt it at USC. Getting the wrong coaches, getting the wrong fit, getting the lack of institutional and administrative smarts from Pat Hayden, from Mike Garrett, and allowing the program to slide into ruin the misguided Sark hire, and then, Pat Hayden making Clay Helton permanent head coach before the 2015 Pac-12 championship game against Christian McCaffrey and Stanford. He should have seen what USC could do against Stanford before giving him the keys to the program. But no, Hayden did it after the win over UCLA. He thought that was enough. And, well, we got saddled with Clay Helton for a very long time. But now we have Mike Bohn, who delivered Lincoln Riley, and Carol Folt. A lot of USC folks doubted her, and it was understandable. But Carol Folt, proved that she knew what she was doing, and Mike Bohn definitely proved that he knew what he was doing. So there is now that word alignment from the president to the athletic director to the head football coach to the football operations piece, and we have it all coming together in 1 year. So it shows that simultaneously everything can come together quickly. Like, we don't have to have 3-year rebuilds. We don't have to have long fix-it-up projects. We can do this in 1 year. And people scoffed at that you can't turn a 4-8 team into a Pac-12 championship game team in 1 year. No, actually you can if you get everything in alignment, if you get the right coach, and then if you don't have the right alignment, then you go into the wilderness the way UCLA has for so long, and that wilderness experience for UCLA continues. All right, other thoughts about USC and UCLA. Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Now, he's a baller, and he battles and he fights. But this was the difference between DTR and Caleb Williams. What separates the two? DTR committed 4 turnovers in this game, and Tony Siracusa mentioned last week, and it's entirely accurate of Tony to say this. The reason why DTR was a lot better this year than last year is that we didn't see the crippling mistakes from DTR. He would throw a big interception. He would make a big mistake in previous UCLA seasons. Last year's UCLA-Oregon game in Pasadena, he would make those 1 or 2 really crippling mistakes. And so against Arizona last week, and then here against USC, DTR regressed to his 2021 self at the absolute wrong time. Just seemed to be a little too intent on trying to make something happen instead of letting the game come to him. And that is something that Caleb Williams, he doesn't fall into that trap. Because Caleb Williams is so luminously talented, you will see him make some ambitious throws at times. And he did get intercepted once in this game, but for the season, Caleb Williams still has just 3 interceptions. That's as many interceptions as DTR threw in this game alone. So you still saw, after his 1 early pick and after getting down 14-0, you saw Caleb Williams regroup. You saw him center himself, and you saw him make really good decisions. And it's actually ironic here that if there's anything that Caleb Williams is guilty of, in a certain sense, it's that he's not more aggressive as a runner. So for some running quarterbacks who can run extremely well, their flaw is that they run too early. They abandon the pocket too early. But with Caleb Williams, he's good about staying in the pocket. And if anything, sometimes he stays in the pocket too long. He commits to the pass, to throwing the ball a little too much, and you get into a situation where he actually should take off. And we saw this at the end of the game. If he runs up the middle, it's probably game over. USC probably gets a first down, runs out the clock. DTR doesn't get the ball back. So if anything, Caleb doesn't let loose sometimes as much as he should. And I'm talking specifically about using the running game, because we've seen Caleb Williams run in the open field. I mean, we don't see it too often. Saw it a little bit against Utah. We saw it last year. If you followed Oklahoma last season, he ripped off some big runs against Oklahoma State in the Bedlam game. Caleb Williams can run for 60, 65 yards. That is the kind of athlete he is. And if anything, he's been so committed to playing within Lincoln Riley's structure, playing within Lincoln Riley's offense, that he doesn't let himself loose. Now, part of this is, don't get injured, because as good as Miller Moss might be, you still, if you're USC, you don't want to test out that thesis in a UCLA game late in the season. you do want to preserve yourself. Caleb Williams has been really good about protecting his body. And that's a remarkable amount of maturity for a sophomore. You don't usually see quarterbacks who are that self-aware in terms of their value to the team and, don't get hurt, preserve your body. Caleb Williams is so far advanced. He's so far ahead of many of his peers in terms of protecting himself and showing kind of a big picture view. And so if anything, he sometimes restrains himself as a runner, might take some risks as a passer, but he restrains himself as a runner. And so on that late play against UCLA, he needed to loosen the chains a little bit and needed to go for it as a runner. He didn't, but hey, there was Corey Foreman to save the day. But that is one of the illustrative differences between Caleb Williams and DTR, that Caleb Williams played within himself a lot more in this game, and DTR's mistakes were crucial, and USC cashed in most of them, not all of them. There was a Dennis Lynch missed field goal. We'll talk about that in a bit. But USC did cash in most of those mistakes, and USC definitely needed the turnovers that DTR provided, and it was one of the defining factors in this game. Other notes from this contest. One is that, Travis Dye injured. All right. That was obviously a big deficit for USC. But what happened? Two things. One, Austin Jones. He played great. And if you followed the Pac-12, the past 10, 15 years, you know that Stanford has been a nemesis for UCLA. Now, obviously, Stanford lost to UCLA this year because Stanford just isn't good anymore. But on a larger level, Stanford really bothered UCLA over the past decade. It beat the Bruins in a Pac-12 championship game in 2012, dealt UCLA a very damaging loss in 2014, which frankly, the Bruins, since that moment in 2014, it took them 8 years to really get back to a good position late in a Pac-12 season. So Stanford's bothered UCLA a lot. And so Austin Jones basically carried forth that tradition of Stanford bothering UCLA, played a complete game. Obviously, people will look at over 100 rushing yards for Austin Jones and the production that he gave as a running back. But let's remember, Lincoln Riley didn't play Austin Jones a lot this season because he didn't block as well as Travis Dye. He didn't pass protect as well as Travis Dye. We didn't really see big issues, big problems with Austin Jones as a pass protector, as a blocker. He really elevated his whole game, not just as a running back. And of course, one of the ironies of all of this with Austin Jones is that because he wasn't as evolved as a pass protector and as a blocker early in the season, which led him to not get as many snaps, to not get as many carries, to not get as much live action as Travis Dye did. The irony there is that left him fresh for this UCLA game. Lincoln Riley was able to entrust him with a bigger workload, and he was able to handle that workload. And that might not have happened if he had been getting a lot more carries over the past 2.5 months. Funny how it all works out. Funny how the economy of a season and the economy of a workload worked to Austin Jones and USC's benefit. So that was one way in which the Trojans compensated for the absence of Travis Dye. And the other thing was Jordan Addison back at full strength. And so, Austin Jones had to replace Dye as a runner, but Jordan Addison also needed to give USC that home run capability, that field stretching capability in the passing game. 11 catches, 178 yards. He was the baddest dude on the field. He was an elite receiver. USC got him back at full strength. The Trojans needed that. And UCLA's secondary had to devote so much attention to Jordan Addison that Kyle Ford was then able to get open. Taj Washington was then able to make some plays. Other receivers were able to also contribute in the passing game, but Jordan Addison unlocked those opportunities, which enabled Caleb Williams, before all was said and done, to throw for 470 yards on a night when USC rolled up 649 yards of offense and yet left points on the field. That is the scary part about this USC offense. But Jordan Addison clearly was able to step into the void and give USC an elite playmaker to compensate for the absence of Travis Dye. So without Jordan Addison, does USC win this game? I don't think so. And so it was just in time, and it reinforces a key point that these previous few weeks, Arizona, Cal, Colorado, USC wasn't at full strength, but USC didn't have to be at full strength. It was all about getting ready for UCLA, marshaling the resources, and being able to make sure that players were ready for this game. Now, Mario Williams and Eric Gentry, as it turned out, not ready for this game, not fully physically fit, not fully physically ready, but there were enough returning pieces to make the difference for USC. So Jordan Addison was one of them. We also have to focus on the offensive line. Andrew Voorhees and Bobby Haskins, they had been banged up to varying degrees. They were moderately hurt. I mean, no severe injuries, but they were reduced in strength and overall effectiveness in the previous few weeks. Lincoln Riley, said, or at least hinted at, both of them being close to full strength, being a lot better in their overall progression and how they looked in practice over the past week. That certainly made a difference. You got both Voorhees and Haskins part of the mix on the offensive line. So USC was as close to fully healthy, fully operational on that offensive line compared to early September. You had something really close to your 5 starters all rocking and rolling on that offensive front. So that was also a very key central component of USC's offense being able to function at a high level and outscore DTR in a shootout. So that's all part of the picture. That's all part of the economy of success for USC against UCLA.